How high can he go?
I think we have to keep it calm. Right. Because you are very good here in England to push players and manage very high, and then you hammer them when they are one or two bad performances. And then you hammer them when they are one or two bad performances.
That was Erik Ten Hag speaking after the FA Cup final about Kobbie Mainoo. And he is so ridiculously right that all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, here we are. One or two bad performances. And was it even a bad performance from Kobbie Mainoo? And we're having conversations about him. I hate the English press for how they treat English players when it comes to not just international duty, but in general, but especially when it comes to England. I don't like seeing Manchester United players play for England. And this isn't a Man United specific problem, by the way. It's just how the English press treats their footballers. I'm sure it must happen in other countries. And anybody who's watching who's not English, please let me know how your press treats your players, especially ahead of international tournaments, right? England haven't won. Let's not even speak about what England haven't won. But this game against Iceland, right? England were crap. Kobbie Mainoo, I didn't think he particularly had a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. Does he possess the positional discipline to play the number 6 role? Jacob Steinberg here, who has been absolutely walloped on Twitter. He really got United Twitter going after him, saying this. Allowed Iceland to move through midfield too easily before their goal. Lacks physicality. Needs a more disciplined partner, Declan Rice. Needs a more disciplined partner than Mainoo. England were too open. Well, Jacob, let's take a quick look at what the formation was here. Right, so you can see Kobbie Mainoo playing alongside Declan Rice in a midfield too. Let's get a couple of screenshots up for you here. Where is Declan Rice? Does it look like he's playing in a midfield too alongside Kobbie Mainoo? No, he's way far ahead of him. Well, where's Declan Rice here? There he is, jogging back about 15 yards behind him. And there's Kobbie Mainoo tracking his man, getting back in front of him. I think it's very odd to go after Kobbie Mainoo. After the game, Declan Rice spoke about him, spoke about his partner. And this is the thing that annoys me, right? This is the thing that will always grate me. It feels like the English press almost want English players to fail. Their currency is based around it. Instead of supporting these players, right? Instead of putting their arms around their shoulder to try and help them cope with the pressures of playing for England, instead, they always go the other angle and the other direction. And look, right? I will never, ever, ever, ever forgive Gareth Southgate for what he did to Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford in that Euro 2020 final at Wembley. Hardly kicked a ball the entire tournament. How about you both come on and take penalties at Wembley in the biggest game that there has been for England in a long time? They missed their penalties, and we saw the widespread racist abuse that came after that. And the Sun, with their back page after that game against Iceland there, using a photo of Bukayo Saka, right? The pun was more important to the Sun than telling a fair and accurate story of what happened during that game. And that will have consequences in terms of public opinion, in terms of where to point the finger. And had channels like this existed, right? Had YouTube existed in the same way it has now for all those tournaments that have happened with England, right? The press would have been called out for it. These platforms didn't exist before, right? Because I remember what happened to David Beckham. I remember what happened with Wayne Rooney throughout his entire career, right from the very beginning, even before he was an English player. The English press, instead of trying to support their players going into international tournaments, they do the complete opposite. They make it more difficult for them. They scapegoat them. Now, I don't actually think they want them to fail, But that treatment of players is exactly why this always stands true. It should be the pinnacle, maybe not the pinnacle, well, set in terms of an international career, playing for your country. What an honour that is. But it's almost like a burden to be an English player and play for your country in terms of how the press represent you. As United fans, or as football fans in general, as I said, this is not a Manchester United exclusive problem, and I would never pretend it to be. But what Erik ten Hag said in that little clip at the start of the video, it just rings true. We're so quick to put players on a pedestal and so quick to boot the pedestal out from underneath their feet at any possible opportunity in the press. And England haven't won anything. Maybe you'd think that the press might approach it differently if they really wanted England to win an international tournament. Maybe you'd think, well, actually, the pressures of playing for England is quite severe. Maybe we should be defending these 19-year-old players who have just broken in to not only their club first team, but also, was that his second start for England? I just find it so odd and strange and aggravating, if I'm being totally honest, how little support these players get in the press. Maybe it's the pressures of, is it the pressures of playing for England? When you play for your country, I suppose there is no margin for error. It's not a 38-game season where you can improve, and the expectations are perfection immediately with no flaws. And if there are flaws, then we're going to dig you out for them. And we're going to dig you out straight away. And I just think it has more of an impact on these players. I'm sure you've all seen that documentary, right? Of David Beckham speaking about the impact of what happened to him after the 98 World Cup. By the way, he came back to Manchester United. We closed the doors behind the baying mob that was the press. And David Beckham felt safe. Man United went on to win a treble. He was one of the best players in the world because of the environment that made him feel comfortable. That England environment cannot make any of those players feel comfortable. It's like they can feel the pitchforks coming behind them before they've even kicked a ball. And that sort of pressure, to a certain degree, can help players reach levels that they otherwise wouldn't have. But the fact that England haven't won a tournament in that many years tells you it probably isn't helping. And I almost don't like seeing United players play for England because I know what will happen as soon as anything goes wrong. They're going to need scapegoats. They're going to come after not just United players, but they're just going to come after everybody. And I'd love to know in the comments, as I said, it's a week before an international tournament, and here we are again. Does this happen in other countries? I'm sure it must. But if the English press maybe just approached it a little bit differently and maybe aimed to help English players, maybe that could be the little difference maker, the little extra 5% that England needs to actually win a tournament, rather than seemingly just wanting them to fail.